But anyway, he called me on the landline. I don't know where he got the number from. And he said, "Hey, I'm Tobias Sammet from a German band called Edguy, and I'm doing this thing called the Metal Opera."
Hey, Ronnie, how's it going? It's Brandon calling from the Signals of Intuition.
Hi, how are you doing?
Doing well. How you doing, Ronnie?
I'm all right.
Good, good, good. So when I do these, I like to start at the beginning of you as a musician and then work our way up to the new solo record, Trinity. So starting from the beginning, where did you grow up and how did you get started in music?
I grew up in a provincial city called Vejle in Denmark, and my father could actually sing as well, you know. And my siblings are between 9 and 13 years older than me, and it was like like my bunny is over the ocean, and but singing a lot of stuff. I grew up listening to a lot of Beatles and '60s music, late '60s, early '70s music, and every time I went out to my aunt, lives on the countryside, they had a piano and an acoustic guitar. I just couldn't stay away from that. I just had to fiddle around with it, and I've been singing since I was very, very young, in school as well, at what do you call it, Christmas events and stuff like that. So I've been a fan of music and singing and eventually writing since I was a little kid. And growing up in the '70s, yeah, absolutely.
And then, so you mentioned guitar and piano. Do you play other instruments? I know you're a songwriter, so do you play guitar and different things like that?
Yeah, I play enough to write on it. I mean, normally sometimes, most of the time, the ideas comes in my head, and you got the idea in your head, you can find out how to play it on the guitar. I don't play guitar live though, and I'm not a flash guitar player or anything, neither keyboard player. But I got a piano and I got guitars in the house, and so that's where I'm writing. So either the idea comes first in the head, or I get an idea by playing some chords on the piano or on the guitar, or I get an idea for a riff or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if you're anything like me. Oftentimes, my song ideas are like, the shower, out and about walking or whatever, and it's just, oh God, I got to record this now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we got they always come at some weird time. Sometimes, sometimes you're in the zone, and I don't know where it comes from, and they just come. Actually, yeah. Well, if we have friends over for dinner or something, having some wine and stuff, I might often get tickled with an idea, and I say, "Pardon me, I just got to go upstairs and record it on my iPhone with a guitar or something like that." So yeah, it comes at funny times. But I'm like, if I'm psyched up for writing songs and writing a new album, it just comes. And as a matter of fact, there's two funny stories from this album that, like Trinity, the title track, which was actually the last song to be written for this album. That idea came. I was going to watch 10cc, an old '70s band, and
Hmm.
some friends and my wife were waiting in a car, but I had to go down to a reception, the 50th anniversary birthday, where I was invited. But so I just wanted to go down, drop down 2 bottles of wine, and I was there for one beer. And on my way out of the bar, I had the idea for the top line in that song, for the chorus, right? And I just had to call my wife and say, "Hey, you got to wait 10 minutes, man. I just got to get this down on tape, not on tape, but on the
Yeah.
iPhone." And another idea from also one of the last songs written for this album was "What If," the last song on the album, the ballad kind of thing. And where I had the idea and the words. Well, I just dropped off my wife like 6:30 in the morning to work, and I was on my way back home, and I got that idea. So I actually had to pull over and just, sing it and write down in my notes what I just had in mind. So yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, it's funny. No, I mean, I remember before cell phones having to run to, my stereo that had a tape recorder on it just to get the idea out, be 2 a.m, falling asleep and go, oh God, I got to get this down now.
Exactly.
Sleep can wait.
I used to have this before the iPhones came along. I used to have dictaphones all over the place in my car and in several rooms in my house and stuff like that, and one on me when I was walking or whatever. Little dictaphones, but with little cassettes. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, so in fact, I don't have a dictaphone anymore. I still got all the tapes, and there probably could be some interesting stuff because I used that all the way up. I mean, up until at some point in the '90s or something like that.
So tell me this. So you talked about being a kid getting started. How then does Pretty Maids form? Like, had you already been playing in bands before Pretty Maids?
Yeah, but I mean, as I said, I grew up in the '70s, and I grew up with a lot of the glam rock, the glitter, like T-Rex, the Sweet Slade, and that kind of stuff. And bands like Queen, Electric Light Orchestra, Blackman Turn Overdrive, all that kind of pop music that was on the radio and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I was like 15, 16, I really got into hard rock and metal. And that was mainly Black Sabbath and, well, actually, I guess it started with bands like Whitesnake, Rainbow, and that kind of stuff, AC/DC. But then I looked back, and then I got back into the Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple and all the bands that came out of that. So I just actually put up a note in my hometown here when I was 17, I think, that I played in, in the 70s, I played in several cover bands, just playing cover songs of the Sweet and stuff like that. But then I got really into hard rock, and I just put up a note in a local music store saying that a heavy metal singer or hard rock singer needs a band. And then I had a call from another city that is 30 kilometers from here, Horsens, where the band actually originates from. And I went up for some to check it out, who the guys were, and we just had a couple of beers, and then I went for an audition, and that was it. We basically played a lot of cover songs like Whitesnake and stuff, but mostly Thin Lizzy actually when we started out, and then suddenly, very quickly, me and Kenny found out that we could write together, and yeah, the rest is kind of history.
For sure. Now, tell me this. So, jumping ahead a few years to Future World, you guys had Graham Bonnet sing backing vocals on a couple songs, like I think Rodeo, and I think there's a few others. How did he come to sing on that record, and what was it like working with him?
Well, first of all, it was great because he was one of my heroes. I mean, I loved the Down to Earth album by Rainbow. I liked Alcatraz. I liked the album Assault Attack he did with Michael Schenker Group. And we all did. But the thing is, the reason why he got into the picture was that Eddie Kramer was producing the album. And we needed some backing vocalists, and we needed somebody to help out with some keyboards. And so he just produced one of Alcatraz's album. I think it was Disturbing the Peace, actually. Or wouldn't always, probably the one after, I can't remember. Dangerous Game, I think it was. And then he just called them, and they flew over from LA, Graham Bonnet and Jimmy Walton, the keyboard player from Alcatraz. And then
Jimmy was on it too. I didn't even realize.
Oh, well, he didn't play on it, but he just helped setting up some systems and some sounds and stuff like that, So that's how Graham Bonnet came into the picture, man. He's the loudest singer I ever heard, man. I mean, even behind the metal doors, you could hear him sing, Super nice guy, and I never met him until like 2014. I was doing this anniversary show in German where there was a couple of Purple-related guests and stuff, and we met at breakfast at the hotel, and he saw me and said, "Hey, Ronnie, how are you doing?" I was quite surprised he remembered me at all. But truly a super nice guy, a truly gentleman. I haven't seen him since.
Also on that album, so I think if I have it right, you guys started with Eddie and then wasn't going well, and then you guys brought in Flemming Rasmussen? Is that how you say his last name? Flemming. I just think of Metallica Flemming. That's all I think of.
Yeah. I mean, the whole recording process of Future World dragged out for ages, and the record company got pissed off with it because it was very costly. And so they actually sacked Eddie Kramer, and so we continued with the engineer guy called Chris Iska, and did the final recordings of the album. And I tried to do some mixes. We actually mixed it with this guy Chris Iska, but the record company wasn't pleased with it. So when we got back to Denmark, they hired Flemming Rasmussen, who just did Metallica and Rainbow at that time, to mix half of the album, and the rest of the album, me and Kenny flew to Berkeley, California, in the Fantasy Studios, and mixed it with Kevin Elson.
Okay. Oh, right on.
Right. So, it was great. I mean, he was riding high in the charts with Europe's The Final Countdown back then, so he was very hot. So the Americans said, we need this guy for this other Scandinavian band, which was pretty much. Unfortunately, not any of the songs became as big as a hit as The Final Countdown, but let's do. Anyway, Future World became a very commercial breakthrough whatsoever, So, yeah. That's the story.
Very interesting. Did you guys work with him as a producer later on? I thought he produced a couple of your guys' albums. I think it was in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
Kevin Elton, Flemming Rasmussen.
Or Flemming, yeah.
Yeah, we got a great relationship. It was what we clicked spot on, So the next album we did with him was 92, which he entirely produced. And yeah, we did an album called Scream that he also produced, and an album called Carpe Diem as well, where he mixed it, stuff. Yeah, but we haven't worked with him since 2000s.
Okay. Now, is he a very hands-on producer, or is he more of just an engineer trying to capture what you guys have?
Oh, he's got a good set of ears, or he had. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I met him not so long ago. I mean, I think he partly retired. He's doing lesser, local bands and stuff now, but still he's a super nice guy, a very funny guy, and he was a great guy back then. But he wasn't the kind of guy that said, hey, do this, do that, but he listened. So he was, I would say, more the engineering kind of producer, I would say.
Ah, okay. And now tell me this, you'd mentioned Deep Purple, so I got to ask, Jump the Gun, you guys worked with Roger Glover. Tell me about working with him as a producer. And I've read it was the most expensive album made in Denmark at the time?
Was.
Much to your pocketbook.
It was costing in my royalties, man. I'm telling you, our royalties. Yeah, no, but I mean, Roger, that was just, I mean, he was one of our heroes as well, So when it started off that we toured with Deep Purple on the House of Blue Lights in 1987. So that's where we got to know Roger a little bit. And as a matter of fact, we toured with Black Sabbath in '83 on the Born Again tour. And that's when we first time had an encounter with a Purple guy, and that was Ian Gillan, who actually did quite a lot of good things for us in England, recommended us to the BBC Friday Night Rock Show with Tony Wilson and stuff like that, which was very important back then. But so in '88, we did demos for the Jump the Gun album, and Purple played in Copenhagen, and we were invited. So we met Roger at the hotel afterwards and passed him a cassette with some of the songs. And he listened to it, and we wanted him as a producer. And he, particularly the song called Savage Heart, which is a ballad of the album, right? He was 100% convinced it was going to be a huge hit, So that's how we hooked up with Roger. So Roger came over here to Denmark, and we did pre-production here, and we did a couple of some stuff in the rehearsal. I mean, then we went to Connecticut, me and Kenny, with and Alan, our keyboard player, over to Roger's place in Connecticut. Did pre-production, and then again back to Denmark. Started recording the album. It was just a very long process because in between, Purple had to leave the sessions because they fired Ian Gillan and they had to audition new singers and stuff like that. That eventually became Joel Turner, right? So it was just a long process, but it was a fantastic, great experience. I mean, originally, Roger Glover actually wanted to record the album pretty much live. I remember we were looking at places around the New York area to do it with some kind of a mobile thing, which he did with Purple as well. But we were so hyped on, Def Leppard, Hysteria, that kind of stuff, So I think we kind of it was overkill. We overproduced the album. So when it finally came out in '90, it was sort of the sleaze rock and stuff like that. That was top of the pops, like Guns N' Roses and all these bands came out of LA. So I think Jump the Gun kind of flopped, compared to our expectations and the record company expectations as well, So, but it was fun. It's probably the funniest record session I ever had because he's an extremely funny guy. I met him recently in Buenos Aires. I was playing with Avantasia, and he was playing with Deep Purple on a big festival. And in Hamburg in Germany, not so long ago as well. He's 77, but he's still funny and still spot on, man. You can't fucking see he's 77. He's great on stage and everything. And it was super nice to meet him again. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, I just saw him with Purple a couple years ago, and he was absolutely spot on back then. So speaking of engineers, since Pandemonium and really, I guess, almost everything you've done now since, you've worked with Jacob Hansen. How did you start working with him?
Well, I think basically, I mean, he was on the rise, as a producer. He did this Volbeat thing. And this was the beginning, that became very successful very fast. And I think Kenny lived in Copenhagen at the time, Ken Hammer, and he kind of, moved around in those circles and met Michael Paulson, the singer of Volbeat, and some other guys. And they say, hey, man, if you guys going to do a new, because we were talking about doing a new album. We actually started writing for it after we've been on a riding low for a couple of years because of illness and stuff like that. So they said, hey, we recommend you check out this guy, Jacob Hansen. So we called him, and he came over to our rehearsal camp out in the middle of fucking nowhere and listened to some of the songs, and he came up with some ideas that maybe you should detune the guitar. So it gave it a more up-to-date modern sound and stuff like that. And we did that, and there was just a chemistry working with Jacob from that on, and so we ended up working with him for ever since. Actually, he's done everything we've done ever since that, and I've done, I think, all the vocal sessions I've done since 2010 has been with Jacob Hansen. I mean, he lives an hour from where I live, so both whether I've done Avantasia or Pretty Maids, my own solo stuff, or Nordic Union, I've done it at his place.
Ah, okay. It's funny because I was just about to ask you about that when it comes to recording, because I remember when I interviewed you about 3-4 years ago at the start of COVID, you had mentioned that you very much, like to work with an engineer and don't really like to sort of do a lot of recording on your own. So you're still continuing the same, and working with him, producing your vocals.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Jacob is not the kind of guy that says, "Hey, can you do this or try to do that?" But he's got a good set of ears. He said, you can do better," and and he's very diplomatic, and he's very super nice. Probably the nicest guy I ever worked with in the studio, to be honest with you.
Yeah, as a fellow singer, I go through the same thing where I like as well having someone to be like, do that again or whatever, having someone, or you know what, that was better than you thought it was, keep it.
Yeah, I mean I got confidence in him, and he knows how much he can get out of me, and I know that I can trust him. I think mutual trust in that situation is very good. So it's cool. He's funny. He's got a great sense of humor, and we laugh at the same things and stuff like that. So, and I'm a very restless guy when I walk into the booth. It's got to be done in an hour and a half or 2 hours, including harmonies and stuff like that. Otherwise I get temper.
Yeah.
Whatever. No, but he's psychologically he's very good, working with as well.
Oh, that's great.
So,
Yep. No, finding a match like that is perfect, especially as a singer. It takes a certain temperament to work with singers and know how to, I wouldn't say coddle, but know like when to sort of be like no, and other times to just back off a bit, and let us do our thing.
Yeah, because you know how it is. If it's on a bad day and things just don't really work, you get frustrated and stuff like that. And he understands that. He sees that immediately. So, but normally I'm always pretty disciplined and pretty well prepared when I walk into the studio, and we never really had a problem with it, so to speak.
Yeah. So tell me really quickly, and one of the things you're best known for now is working with Avantasia that you'd mentioned. How did you come to join them? Is it just because Toby's a huge Pretty Maid fan, send you an email and just said, "Hey, I want you to sing on this"?
Well, actually, it is kind of, but the story. Well, I think all the singers he has in his band, comes from bands that he grew up with, that he listened to when he was grew up. And I mean, he's like 10, 12 years younger than me or something like that, He's in the mid-40s, I think, something like that. And I'm an old father, I'm close to 60, right? So, yeah, no, so the funny story is that he actually called me all the way back in 99 on my landline, because that was before I had I may have had a mobile phone. I don't know. Probably had. But anyway, he called me on the landline. I don't know where he got the number from. And he said, "Hey, I'm Tobias Sammet from a German band called Edguy, and I'm doing this thing called the metal opera. Would you be interested? I'm a Pretty Maids fan, stuff like that, And I just said, and honestly, because I think I lost tracks with all the bands that came in the 90s, all of these new power metal kind of generation of bands. So I seriously didn't know who Edguy. I might have seen the name, but I didn't know their music, and I didn't know him.
Yeah.
And I said, on the contrary, I wouldn't have possibly have done anything outside of Pretty Maids at the time being, which I told him. And I says, "But very thanks for your offer, but I have to decline," so very politely. And so that was it. And then, like in 2012, we were on one of these 70,000 tons of metal cruises. And Edguy was playing there, and our Pretty Mates were playing. And a mutual friend of ours actually introduced us by our agent. Said, "Hey, I like this guy, Tobias Sammet, would like to say hi to you." And, yeah, sure, man. So we had a beer and a cigarette, I think, and stuff like that. And then he just told me about the project. And then I remembered that he actually had called me when he told me. So anyway, to make a short story long, or the other way around, so he said, "Hey, but I still want you to be on an album. I'm recording a new album called The Mystery of Time, and I got a song I'd love you to sing if you're interested." So, well, send me the song, on a mail me an MP3, and I'll take a listen to it. And that was a song called "Invoke the Machine," which I liked. And I said, "Yeah,
I love it. Yeah,
yeah.
Great tune."
Yes. So, and then later on, he said, "Well, that's my version of Future World." Okay, now I hear you. Of trying to write a Future World, right? But yeah, so I mean, the rest is history. Then the year after, he asked me to take part of the tour, and which I also agreed to. I mean, there was a good chemistry between us, and since that, I never regretted this, because Avantasia has been a great experience for me, and it's super nice guys. It's like one big family, and Toby's one of my really good friends in this business. So yeah, I don't have any bad things to say about that. I'm glad I did it. Probably should have done it 20 years before. I don't know. 12 years before, that is. But anyway, it's good fun. It's always good fun. Yeah, and it it's like it's a pretty long show, but it's like everybody can shine. You go in and sing a couple of duets and stuff like that. and have a lot of red wine behind the stage and stuff. That's cool. It's like a paid vacation.
Yep, that's no. I saw you guys in Chicago, 2019. I want to say something like that, and
Mhm.
I loved how seamless it was. Where I mean, every song or two, there's people swapping in, and the show never lets up. But like you say, it's nice where everybody gets a chance to shine and have their couple moments throughout the show.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot for those who tag along to the show or comes to the shows. I mean, there's a lot of different singers, and so I don't think really it gets boring because something new is happening all the time. But the shows over here in Europe, the production and stuff are way bigger than in America. Of course, to bring all that stuff to America for 3 or 4 smaller gigs, would have been very expensive. So, but it's a great thing. It's funny to be a part of that. Also to do something else that I normally usually do. It's been good fun for me.
Yeah, I'm sure it's got to be nice too to take a bit of a back seat in the whole thing because I'm sure with Pretty Maids, you're up front, that's your thing. You have a certain level of responsibility with it. And Avantasia, I'm sure you get to relax just a bit more during that show, eh?
Yeah, I mean the focal point is Toby, right? And the main focus is on him. It's his project, and it's his song. He's a great songwriter, and but he's so goddamn good at writing songs that fits the individual singers. That's what all the singers says. He knows exactly how. If you write a song, when he writes the song, he has maybe me in mind, or Yolanda in mind, or Jeff Tate, or whatever. So he's very good at that. There's a tendency that I actually, when I sing Invoke the Machine, even though I didn't write that song, I feel it belongs to me a little bit. It feels kind of my song.
Yeah. All right, so we're quickly running out of time. So let's talk your brand new solo album, Trinity, coming out October 11th on Frontiers. So for all 3 records, you've had more or less the same band with some extra guests and that sort of thing. But the band, as far as I can tell, did it come from your original involvement with At the Movies?
It did actually.
Or were you already working on a solo album?
Yeah, because when I did that At the Movies song, that Tina Turner song, We Don't Need Another Hero,
which I loved, by the way. I listened to that so much when that first record came out during quarantine. So.
Yeah, I think it turned out to be a pretty cool version, and I love the song in itself. But Chris asked me, "Hey, man," and I said he knew that I was struggling because of surgery and a lot of radiation therapy from cancer, at the time, which hit me in 19, and then so I couldn't actually sing until March because every time I wanted to reach a high note, I started coughing and it was tickling in my throat, So that was the first song that actually convinced me. I said, "Yeah, I'll do it. If it sounds good, we can use it. If it doesn't, you got to find somebody else to sing it." But I went over to Jacob Hansen's studio and I said, "Let's try to do this." And I just realized, hey, man, my pipes are still working. I'm back. And it was a enormous relief for me. And from there on, and I said, "But I got all these fucking ideas, all these songs." It was a lockdown and we couldn't really do much. So Chris said, "Well, send those songs to me." And then we just used the At the Movies lineup because I had other people in mind, actually. But so we ended up the base around my solo albums is those guys from At the Movies. Well, at least 3 of them: Chris Laney, Pontus Ekberg, the bass player, and Alan Sorensen, the drummer. And then we got different guitar players and stuff like that in the band. So yeah, that's how it turned out that way, and I don't regret it because they're great musicians and Linnea, the female singer, I think gives another dimension to these solo albums because I never had a female backing vocalist. I normally always did the backing vocals myself with Pretty Maids in recent years, but it was great to have her on the record because she's a great singer and it gives the music a different dimension.
For sure. Now tell me this. So I don't have the lyrics for the record and the promo, so I don't believe this is a concept album, but I sense there's a pretty strong theme throughout the songs. Like you've got Trinity, Soul Divine, If You Can Dream It, and Godless, and to me that seems to come from a position of like a belief in God, if you will, or something like that. And then the album sort of ends with raining fire and, things starting to go bad to what if, questioning what if heaven's just a hope that we hold on to. So I'm curious, is that sort of a theme that's sort of weaving throughout the record?
Yeah, I mean, if you talk about the song Trinity, it's the Trinity is both things, I'd say, and of course, it's a religious thing. But it's also a little game of words. But in general, let me put it this way: I was born and raised as a Christian, and I've never been super religious. I never went to church every Sunday and stuff like that, but because I'm not a saint, I've been a sinner too, you know. But I got to say that in recent years, and particularly I always believed in God somehow. I don't know what God is, but it's something bigger, something better than this. That's what it is to me. That brings me some sort of comfort, and it particularly since I got cancer, because then you start when you got like a journal saying you're incurable sick with cancer, stage 4 cancer, God and belongs, and it spread to the bone marrow, which is my case, right? Well, knowing that we can all die tomorrow, man, get run over by a truck or get a heart attack. But it's just when you got it on pen to paper, you know, it becomes a little more real.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, in the last 3 albums, and this one no exception. It's not a concept album, I gotta say, but there are some lyrics that are more personal. And well, you know, you start thinking differently. You see life in a different perspective, I guess. I mean, it's like embrace the day. I mean, every day is a gift and stuff like that, you know. So that's pretty much what it's all about. It's difficult to me to pinpoint every lyric, you know. I'd like people to listen to it and get their own, perceive it the way they want to, you know. But I'm not trying to, you know, to preach anything to people. I'm just writing about it from my point of view.
Of course, yeah. It seems to be sort of like you say, questioning, not questioning like in a bad way or whatever, but sort of thinking like, what is there next? What is there more to life? You know, all the rest of it, right? The sort of basic questions everybody has. So, yeah, I think that was a strong sense I got through the record.
Cool. I'm glad to hear that. So as I said, I'm not trying to preach anything. The same thing about some of the stuff I write about, like which I've done for ages. But in particular, on my solo, I was like the climate changes, you know, the environment, war in Ukraine, like raining fire, about despots, autocrats, like in Ode to a Madman, you know. But I'm a news freak, and I always indulge myself in watching documentaries about politics, history, and stuff like that. But I don't want to be political in the sense that taking a stand, whether I'm left or the right, and I don't want to preach anything to people. I'm trying to write songs about something that everyday human beings, Homo sapiens, can relate to, like you and me, right? So, and I always took interest in writing about that instead of Dungeons and Dragons and science. Some people are good at that. I'm not.
Sure, exactly. No, I'm the same way. When I write lyrics, it tends to be more of a social kind of look, you know, so totally feel there. We're quickly running out of time, Ronnie, so I wanted to ask you, by the way, is there anything planned for Pretty Maids coming up?
There's been issues between the band for since 2019, particularly between me and Kenny, you know, so... But now we're actually talking again. You know, we just met a little while ago, and we still have some business through 40 years we have to discuss sometimes on mails. I think it's going to end up that we would bury the hatchet, if nothing less for the fans. I mean, it's always been a love-hate relationship, and I can't confirm anything, but I think we might do some selected gigs next year or something like that, you know, because the whole thing ended in a bad way, and I got sick, and we had a brand new album out in 2019, and we never hit the road with it, you know, because we had to cancel the tour. Then the lockdown came, the Corona thing. So yeah, let's see. We might do something next year. Let's see.
Here's hoping. Well, as a big fan, I'm certainly hoping you guys do. And if new material comes, great. If not, even if it's live gigs, or
I don't know if the new material, we haven't talked about that at all. But I mean, I think we owe the fans to, and partly ourselves as well, to go back. And I don't know if we're going to finish. If it's going to be a farewell tour, but whatever, you know, with my condition and everything, you never know. But let's see. We talked a bit about it, so let's see where it ends.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time. Absolutely loving the new record. I was looking through it and going, I can't decide on a favorite song.
That's good.
I wanted to mention what my favorite one was, and I'm like, I don't know. I think there's about 5.
Okay,
so
cool. Yeah. Well, it's a bit of this and a bit of that. I think the album actually, I think compared to the previous one, you know, it's a little heavier, you know, because a lot of the stuff was written on guitar this time. And it just have a little bit more edge, you know, but it's still very melodic, you know, and stuff like that. So, and that's a key word for me, is that it's got to be a good song. It's got to have a good hook line and stuff or an extremely good riff.
Yeah.
There's no difference to that from what I've already done. I'm an old school songwriter, man, and that's what I like.
Yep, I hear you. Well, my hat's off on a fantastic record. Looking forward to what you've got coming up next, and thanks so much for your time, Ronnie.
Thanks, Brendan. Nice having you here, having me on your show. Thank you very much. We'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.